Well, Drake, this week's main event is one that we didn't expect, but we've talked about before, where it got promoted after Max Holloway versus Yair Rodriguez fell apart. Rest in peace to a great matchup. I hope we see one time. Uh, yeah, of course. But now we've got Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises. Now, this is an interesting fight for both men. Makhachev has obviously been extremely dominant since 2016. His last loss coming to Adreno Martins by knockout in 2015. That was quite the upset at UFC 192, as we were talking about before we got on air here. But since then, he's looked really good. And in his last outing against Drew Dober, he looked very, very good. Got the finish, just kind of completely neutralized Dober, who is a good upcoming prospect himself. It's looking like a bit of a mini Khabib, which is what a lot of people are kind of saying he is, since Khabib is in his corner and helping to train him. Then you got Moises, on the other hand, who, is known for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu style and has now managed to put a 3-fight win streak together against names like Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and Alexander Hernandez. So his resume is a little bit stronger. So breaking down and giving the prediction for this fight, I would say we need to break down how this is going to go, but we know it's going to be a ground game, right? I don't expect these guys to stand and trade, although we have seen that happen in the past, two ground heavy guys deciding to stand. But Drake, what is your take on this particular fight? Who do you think gets this done?
Well, Pat, just to put it out there, I think that I'd be pretty surprised if Islam does not win this fight. Like you said, he's looked very dominant, and of course, the recent resume probably a little bit stronger, for Moises, potentially, depending on how you want to look at it and value these guys. The last 3 wins, if we're just going to look at the last 3 wins specifically, which Moises is on the 3-fight winning streak. Michael Johnson, a guy who just can't seem to get the wins anymore, but he can put up a fight until he, falters. That was kind of the case in that one. He was looking pretty solid, then just got caught right quick in the start of the second round. Then Bobby Green, solid one. Bobby was looking pretty good up until facing Moises, and, looked all right in that fight too, but a very solid performance from Moises. And then the Hernandez one as well, which Hernandez believes he won, but I think he's the only person who believes that, which, hey, more power to you. And then Makhachev on his side, Drew Dober, Davi Ramos, and Arman Sarukian, which a lot of people are very high on Arman as well, which I think reason to be. He's looked pretty darn good since that Islam fight as well. That fight even won fight of the night, and it was pretty much entirely grappling based, which is always very fun to see. And the thing about this one, Pat, I think is it'll be interesting with the 5 rounds and how, we want to see Islam kind of fight in those later rounds, because everyone has such high hopes for him. He's going to be the next champion. Some people think what Joe Rogan this week said, he's a top 3 guy, which, okay. I think Islam's very good. I do. But we have no proof of this just yet. Everyone is really, this hype train is just built up very quickly, kind of out of nowhere. I feel like since Khabib retired, everyone's like, Islam's amazing now. He's amazing because Khabib's gone. Like, just by default, he's taken that spot just because Khabib left. Like, without doing anything, he's taken it. But nonetheless, Islam is still very talented, but I think he still needs to prove it a lot. And in this fight, a win, I don't think will prove it, depending on how it goes. Not a knock on Moises. It's just he's not one of those top guys yet, and I think we need to see Islam against one of them. But to get closer to telling us how good he is, he doesn't have to go to those later rounds, but it'd be good to see if the gas tank holds up, especially because those guys at the higher up the ladder, like let's say Gaethje, for example, or Dan Hooker, pretty much any one of them, you name it, they can hang in the later rounds, and I would expect to do damage to somebody like Islam. But I think that this fight, Moises, actually his best chance will be on the feet. Actually, we haven't seen anything too crazy from Makhachev. Yes, he has shown some power. He knocked out Gleison Tibau, who's been a notoriously, tough guy to finish, just a savvy veteran, very durable. but nothing spectacular with his striking just yet. He's a very strong grappler like Khabib. There's those comparisons for a reason. At AKA, all of that. Moises, as you mentioned, a very strong BJJ guy. But the thing that we can point at here, though, Pat, and I hate to do MMA math on you, but I'm gonna because it's very strong in this fight. It is. You can only look at MMA math in this fight, and I think you'll be okay. So let's look at it. All right. So, as I mentioned, Makhachev defeated Davi Ramos before Drew Dober, which Davi, I will tell you, I actually did pick Davi Ramos in that one because I loved me some Davi Ramos. I love his jiu-jitsu. Hasn't quite worked out for him in the UFC, but I thought, maybe he'd be able to snag something on Makhachev. Not the case. Got shut down pretty easily for the most part. So there's a good example of a very strong BJJ player who just really didn't have anything for Islam. And then, Sarukian, not quite the same caliber of submission artist, but a very strong grappler who made things competitive enough to where they got fight of the night. But then you go over and look at Moises' record, and most notably, his losses to Benil Dariush and Damir Ismagulov, who are both very strong grapplers as well, wrestlers, all that. And we're able to shut down his BJJ as well. So, and I think that Islam is a guy who of course, people are going to say maybe better than both of them in the grappling department, but the point is he is just as good, if not better, right? So if I'm going to look at the MMA math, I think those are really the only fights that you need to look at for this one. But it's gonna tell us a lot, though, to see if he can handle it. I mean, about both guys, if Moises can present threats. It's an interesting matchup. I do think for those little specificities, like I said, the 5 rounds, whatnot. But in the end, I have trouble seeing Makhachev lose the fight unless he does end up getting caught in something. And maybe that would come later if he gets tired from beating up Moises and he just hangs on. But ultimately, I think this is a matchup that he should be able to win. And hopefully we get something like RDA next or a guy who is above him, because he is at that point where he needs to be fighting up, especially when the commentary is saying he is, a top 3 guy right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I will preface this by saying I think the odds out there that have him at a negative 800 is a little bit much. But I do believe him to be the clear favorite here. And looking at, not MMA math as much as just stats, but, if you look at Moises's takedown defense, it is a slightly better than average, very, very slight. You could call it pedestrian and I wouldn't be upset, at 63%. And he has been taken down by guys like, as you mentioned, Damir Ismagulov, Benil Dariush, but also Kurt Holloway and Bobby Green took him down twice. And yes, those guys have wrestling backgrounds, but they're not nearly the wrestler that Makhachev is. So Makhachev is going to take him down. And then when we've seen what Makhachev has been able to do in dominant positions, right? I think Moises can probably stave off submissions, can probably, attempt a couple to throw on Makhachev, but I would imagine this plays right into Makhachev's base of just being heavy wrestler and doing exactly what Khabib did, where you grind him out, you look for the ground and pound, you look for some of those submissions when you have them, but no matter what, you keep that wrestling base strong and steady. And so, I mean, even looking at Makhachev's takedown accuracy, it's 68%. Anytime that you see someone have a higher takedown accuracy rate versus takedown defense, it's usually a bad night for the person with the lower takedown defense. So I think it's going to be 5 rounds of Makhachev just grinding him out, just putting him in the mat, doing whatever he wants to him. It's possible. Again, we haven't seen Makhachev go 5 rounds. Maybe he gasses. That's something that can't be taught. We've never really seen. I don't expect that to be the case, right? And I guess you can teach cardio to an extent, but only so far. Some people, right, just don't have the gas tank. So we will see what he has in that regard. But I don't think there's much here that Moises can do to stop Makhachev. And I think that that's part of the reason why the UFC is fine promoting bumping it up, because they know the star potential that Makhachev has. We've seen it, based on the video we did before. We got a lot of interaction and a lot of people telling us, Islam's a star or whatever. He's kind of taken up Khabib's mantle. He is Khabib's protege, really, if you look at it in a lot of ways. So I think this is kind of a coming out party for him. I expect him to grind out a decision win, maybe a submission if he gets lucky. But I mean, Moises is so slick; it's very possible that he survives it, or ground and pound. I could see that too, hypothetically. But most likely decision win here for Makhachev, and I agree that I don't think it's going to be particularly close. It's MMA. You never know. You could always get an upset. Moises did have 2 knockdowns in his, Dana White Contenders Series Brazil fight that he had. So maybe he's able to land the right shot on Makhachev, and all of a sudden, whoa, you do start each round standing, right? But I just don't. I don't think it's going to be a good night for Moises, and I think it's going to be a full 25 minutes for us as fans and media.
Yeah, very fair prediction, I think. I think the most likely outcome for a finish would be that kind of surprise, I suppose, submission from Moises, but ground and pound could be possible as well from Makhachev. Moises has never been finished though, so that would be very impressive for obviously either of them to finish the other guy. But I expect a pretty heavy grind fest, 5 rounds. Decision would not surprise, and if Islam could do that in a main event, huge deal. And you would have to think that at that point, whether it's fighters ducking Makhachev or the UFC not giving him higher up opponents, which I don't believe to be the case necessarily, but if he can do that, go out there, look great, I mean, he should not be too far away from those very high up fights. This will be we'll know kind of a little bit more of the mapping out of the lightweight division, I think, after this one. If Makhachev wins, if Moises wins, throws a little bit of a wrench in things, as he launches himself up, which would be huge. That'd be huge, and kind of show you the depth of that lightweight division, and anything is possible. So we will see how it goes.
Yeah, well, there you have it. 2 Makhachev's firm Makhachev picks on the predictions there. Let us know your thoughts on this fight. Do you think Makhachev takes it, as we imagine he will, through heavy wrestling? Do you think Moises does have enough tools to get it done somehow? Let us know your thoughts and picks for this. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, bell notification, all of those fun buttons on your screen there. Just click them all, unless you already have, in which case, don't click anymore. We appreciate it. Let's hope it's at least an entertaining main event. And not just lay and pray, but I don't expect that out of Makhachev. That's not really his style. So I think it's going to be some fun grappling. Hear that, casuals? Fun grappling knocking at the door.